Hello. I wanted to take a couple minutes today to talk about communication and how intrinsically important it is to relationships that we are in, whatever kind of relationship that is, whether that's personal or professional, even our relationship to self. Because unfortunately, we oftentimes give ourselves messages that are not the least bit helpful. But in starting with this differently, in looking at our relationships, personal or professional, so frequently we undercompensate. We don't truly say what it is we want to say. We don't say what we mean for fear of coming on too strong, for fear of hurting somebody's feelings, for fear of saying the wrong thing. Frequently, what I find in relationships is that folks end up, if you're discussing sexuality or racism or some theoretically difficult topic, that we don't say half of what we want to say for fear of saying it incorrectly, making a mistake, offending somebody. So we pass the subject off. When it comes to other relationships in which we truly want to talk to somebody clearly, intimately, with clarity and presence, we're frightened of how to say it. And so we undercompensate. We say innuendos, we say hints of what it is we want to say. We offer subtle messages that, unless they are really astute, they would never pick up because we're so frightened of broaching a conversation. We're so uncomfortable broaching a topic that we end up being in a situation where we don't really say what we want to say. And we leave the situation never having resolved an issue, perhaps, or never having shared what we truly want, what we truly think or feel about something. And it's as if we're half present, we're half there. We don't give the other person the opportunity to truly get to see us, to get to know us, to get to understand what it is we wanted to say, because we're so frightened of doing it wrong. We don't do anything. That doesn't support anybody. And what ends up happening is that rather than deepening our connection, rather than having a really honest conversation, we end up having this superficial conversation that we want to believe had some depth to it because we broached the outside of a topic that we know needed to be discussed. We've all done it. I mean, this is no, I've got this conquered and the rest of you need to learn this. We've all done it. We're all in that place at times. I just recognize the need for courage to bring it up, the need to say it and put it out there. It really supports us in being much more real in ourselves. It supports us being much more real in our relationships. And it truly allows others to see who we are, to see how our mind works, what we think, what we feel, what we know in our heart. So I just put that out to you for food for thought, that when we undercompensate in conversation, we're not being honest and real to those we hope to connect to. And the other side of that, the opposite of that, is when we overcompensate. When instead of speaking from a place of intent, we speak from a place of will. We force our voice on somebody. We force our opinion on somebody as if it is the one right opinion. And rarely is that the truth. Our opinion is definitely our opinion and needs to be honored. But really, is our opinion the one right truth? And when we overcompensate because we want to make sure they hear us, instead of deep breathing, instead of talking back and forth, communicating with them, we talk at them. We force the conversation, we force our opinion, we force our thoughts, and it's not our intent. We just want them to hear us. But we want so desperately for them to hear us that we throw it at them. We bury them with the force of what we're trying to say, which doesn't help anybody. And it clearly throws them back and puts them in defense so that they don't hear your intent because you left your intent at the door. You came out instead with will. And that's really an important thing to say. The distinction for us to get that intention comes from our soul, it comes from our essence, it comes from who we are. Will comes from the back of the body. It's a force. It's I will make this happen. I will do this. And when our intent is to truly be present, to truly share our thoughts, whether it's in opposition to something or in alignment with something, and we just even want to take it further. When we come from intention, there's a sense of integrity, a sense of power, and a desire to really be present and to be seen. When we come from will, there's more of an aggression, more of a force that goes into that, where you will hear me, you will know my thoughts, almost as if whether you want it or not, I will make you hear it. Coming from that place causes people, because it's an aggression, it's a defense, that causes people to go into defense themselves. And so the intention that you had to share doesn't get seen. All that gets seen is your demand that they hear you. And that demand causes people to recoil. It causes them to step back and simply to experience the force coming at them, not to hear perhaps the clarity or the truth of the words. I point these two out to you. I'm going to be doing a 1-hour talk the second Tuesday of every month. And next month, we'll be talking about conversation in a much more inclusive way, because it's a 1-hour event with Q&A and all kinds of things, but much more time. But I did want to get the point across here that when we truly want to be seen and heard, it's important to have the courage to step up and not force our thoughts on somebody. Share it, whatever that thought is. Share your thoughts, whether they are joyful and exciting, whether it's sharing a passion with somebody, or whether it's sharing anger with somebody. Anger has no force behind it. Rage does. Anger is simply anger. Rage wants to destroy. Anger is simply mad at a situation, not necessarily even at a person, but at a situation. And we have a problem. I want to resolve that problem. My anger is at the problem. And we can resolve it. When it's at somebody, again, they simply go into defense. When our anger is at a problem, we both can work together to resolve it. And neither one of us is bad or wrong. It just isn't working, and we need to find a better solution. When you can do it that way, there's a meeting of the minds. There's no need to defend ourselves. There's no need to be right or for the other to be wrong. Communication is such an important factor of all relationships, whether it's dealing with a client, dealing with a peer, dealing with a partner, dealing with a child. In my experience, most often when we are in communication with anybody, we want them to see us, to see our heart, to see our soul, to see our thoughts on something. And even if it's a professional idea or professional goal, I want them to see my commitment to this company or to this idea, and let them see how invested I am in finding a way to take it further, to make it more of what it's capable of becoming. And if they can see my heart and the soul in that conversation, they're going to be much more likely to hear my words. When they hear that I'm the only one with all the answers, they're not going to hear much of what I have to say, because instead what they're hearing is my intent, which is to be in will, which is to force them to hear me. Force never works in an intimate relationship. And intimacy, and many are uncomfortable with that word, but it simply means allowing somebody to truly see who I am, what I believe, and what I hope to achieve. And with that, then, my desire for you is to look at, finally, our relationship to self. Because I offer a 10-month program for women in transition, I've seen so much happening with so many women. And the biggest and most intimate of conversations is the conversation with themselves. And that's a real big one for us. Am I honestly willing to allow myself to see the extent of my dream? If I'm living this life and I think, okay, this would be great, what if my real dream is to live this life? Are we willing to be honest enough with ourselves and with others that we allow ourselves to own the fullness of our dream, the fullness of our hopes? And are we willing to allow ourselves to become that person that's necessary to achieve those dreams? This may be my dream, and I can sustain this. But if my dream is to achieve this, is to take my company or my life, my relationships, whatever it may be, to that level, I need to become the person who can live at that level. Which means as I'm working on my dreams, I need to evolve myself. I need to become more of who I was truly meant to be. And that requires, first of all, the most intimate of relationships, the most intimate of conversations, the one with yourself. Living that communication with yourself, being honest with yourself, recognizing, even I've been working on this issue for 5 years and haven't completed it yet. If I truly understand that and have patience and love for myself, I'm going to have a whole lot more patience with somebody else I know who's been working on an issue for 4 weeks and hasn't conquered it yet. So these honest, intimate conversations with ourselves, with somebody that we love in relationship with, or somebody at the office, when we learn how to do a conversation with one well, we've developed the art of conversation and communication, and we can do it everywhere, honestly, fully, from our heart, with our intention, so that we don't undercompensate and not really say what we mean because we're frightened of being heard, or overcompensating and forcing somebody to hear it. I hope this conversation with you has helped you stop for a moment and take a look at what's next for you and where you're going and how you want to be heard when you get there. Thank you so very much.